Hello and welcome to the Viking Code School Flex Program Information Session. My name is Erik Trautman. I'm the founder of Viking Code School, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have about the program. Basically, just as a little bit of background, the Viking Code School is a web development school that's run entirely online. Our core program is a 16-week immersive program where students don't pay tuition until they get a job. And that program takes essentially what we say is advanced beginners to job ready. And it's an incredibly intensive, in-depth program. It's one of the longest and deepest of its kind, regardless of whether it's online or in person. And we're really excited to offer out the program itself in a different format now, based on popular demand. Over the last year or so, we've actually been doing a private alpha test of people going through the curriculum on an individual basis for students who aren't quite ready to drop their job and commit, anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 months to taking on the full-time program. We now have a program available that fits a lot of different modalities and a lot of different lifestyles. So that means that people who are going back to school, people who are based outside of the US and might not be eligible for our full-time program's deferred fee model, or people who are currently working full-time, people who are working part-time, people who are hanging out in Bali and working in co-working spaces out there. There are a lot of different profiles of people who really wanted to take what we have to offer at Viking because of the depth of our curriculum and the fact that you really can't find anything else even close to that level of depth online right now. And we wanted to make sure that we had something that we could offer them as well. So the Flex program is basically where you're able to take our exact same curriculum. It's the same courses, the same projects, the same everything, except instead of working with a cohort of full-time students along the way, you actually get to do it at a self-paced basis with full access to our support along the way. So that means you're a first-class citizen, you have access to our Slack channels, you have access to all of the speakers that we bring in, all of the workshops, all of the office hours. And for students who opt into it, you also potentially have access to one-on-one help from mentors along the way. And so basically the idea of that is that while you're taking this curriculum at your own pace, you also can sort of opt into the level of support that you're most comfortable with, that essentially fits your goals that you would like to get out of the program. So just as a note for anyone who's with us today and might be interested in asking questions, you're able to ask questions using the Q&A app that's on your Google Hangout on air. That'll bring up the little question window next to it, or you can actually go to the Google event, and I've actually posted a link to the direct Hangout here if you want to participate in the discussion live. So I'm actually joined by Dara, our program coordinator. And Dara, I don't know if you just had maybe 10 seconds to introduce yourself and just talk about what you do here and your role in the Flex program. And then after that, I think we can just take a quick step through maybe a typical cycle in the Flex program, and then open things up to questions.
Hey everyone, so I'm Dara. Erik gave a nice little introduction. I'm the program coordinator for Viking Code School, and in particular, I'll be giving extra touch to the Flex program. So my role, basically to support anyone who's currently in it, as well as those who come in, is as an emotional kind of touch point, community touch point, and also logistically in terms of just navigating some of the administrative things around getting checked in and supported and grounded. And then eventually, those who choose to do the job search support action, I'll be touching base with you around that. That's basically who I am.
Thanks a lot, Dara. So basically, I think there are a couple of things that are probably worth covering just on a general level that give you a sense of what we're doing here and what this program is, and answers a few of the key questions. For anyone who is interested in learning more, you can always reach out to flex@vikingcodeschool.com, or I would definitely recommend you check out the page where the program is located, vikingcodeschool.com/flex, and that should have a significant amount of information about the program, what we're doing there, frequently asked questions, former students, all sorts of useful things like that. But before we get started with that, I think it's worth just mentioning what exactly is it that we do with the program. What do we cover? And again, as I mentioned, the program actually covers the same material. It's the same curriculum as we have in our full-time program, and so our immersive program. And so what that means is we take everything from, we have the free prep work available at vikingcodeschool.com/prep. That's for anyone. We highly, strongly recommend that everyone takes that, because it provides all sorts of good stuff. We have a course on design, we have a course on engineering, we have a course on kind of getting yourself up to speed on web development in general, and then another course on actually coding. And so that covers HTML, CSS, and of course working with Ruby. And so from there, we actually have our core curriculum, which picks up essentially where that last coding course leaves off. And so the first portions of our curriculum covers HTML and CSS and Bootstrap and Sass and a bunch of build tools on the front end. And then we move into really focusing on the back end, because this is a program about the depth of programming itself. The languages that we express that through are Ruby and JavaScript primarily. So on the Ruby side, we cover the fundamentals of programming through Ruby. We do everything from object orientation to testing to test-driven development. We use an agile approach to projects here. So the larger projects of the course, there are about 80 projects spaced throughout the course, and the larger of these projects, some of them are meant to actually take several weeks, and those projects are sort of constructed around an agile development framework, which is the kind of framework that you're actually going to experience in the workplace. And it's basically we set up the projects in Pivotal Tracker along the way. You sort of sign off on stories. You have mock-ups to do, everything like that. We do that alongside of all of the learning that we have here. But just to get back to the actual curriculum itself, so test-driven development is also a piece that you'll learn in the very beginning. We have a lot of depth in data structures and algorithms, and that's something that you don't typically find anywhere near a program like this. And so that's we talk about everything from essentially it's a practical look at data structures and algorithms. It's designed for two purposes. One is to help make you a better programmer, is to help make you a better engineer, so that you can think critically about what is the time complexity and the space complexity of the code solutions that you've created. What are if you're implementing a search process, is this a breadth first process or a depth first process? What is the point of a sorting algorithm? Maybe you don't, I mean, you're not likely to implement your own sorting algorithms, but we damn well want to make sure that you understand what's going on behind the surface of the popular sorting algorithms, the searching algorithms, and specifically so that you can, again, make intelligent discussions and intelligent decisions about the trade-offs, the engineering trade-offs involved in different types of solutions as you're going through that. And then the second thing is to help prepare you on the job front. So specifically speaking, obviously as a developer, or maybe not obviously, depending on how much you know about this, but there's a technical interview in every job process when they're hiring for engineers, and that's often a very algorithm-heavy process. And so one thing that I can talk about just a little bit is that throughout the course of our curriculum, we have a significant amount of job support and a significant amount of emphasis on hireability as being our core metric. And so that's the other half of our algorithms and data structures curriculum, is making sure that you have the capacity to confidently walk into a technical interview and know that even if you don't know the exact question that you're being asked, that you do have all the tools that you need to then sit down, take a breath, and begin approaching that problem in a way that's going to make you, make you sort of seem appropriately intelligent and technical to the degree that you actually want to get hired for the job. Because of course, in our full-time program, the core metric is jobs, and people have taken the Flex program for a variety of different reasons, but the same outcome holds true, in that we're looking to make sure that you have the capability of getting from zero to an outcome, which is ultimately a job. And anything that's not a job, at least you are job ready should you choose to change paths. So we move from data structures and algorithms with Ruby. We start stepping onto the web. We cover web scraping, so you learn how to build programs that go out and crawl the web and pull things down. We learn how to go in the front door with API calls and how to work with that. We talk about the Sinatra Web Framework, which is essentially a micro framework that's built on Ruby. It's sort of the minimum amount of stuff that you need to get a web page set up. Then we spend a significant amount of time diving deep into data and Ruby on Rails. And so it's a very data-first curriculum. This is the program itself is not designed to be a one-size-fits-all. It's designed to challenge you. And one of the things that we're going to challenge you on is to make sure that you really understand data, because data is the core foundation of every significant software engineering project that you will ever undertake. And it's incredibly important, and it's totally glossed over in any program that's just sort of showing you how to throw up web pages and web pages and web pages, and kind of it doesn't get into the what's actually going on below the surface. And so we spend time teaching you actually the raw SQL language before you actually are able to use Rails's active record ORM on top of your database, because we want to make sure, as with everything in this program, you're going to build it from the ground up, and then we're going to allow you to start using higher level tools on top of it, so that you always have this underlying core model of understanding before you actually sit on top and are able to use the more professional level tools. So we spend a lot of time working with data, learning how to confidently approach large, hairy apps and break them down into data models, start sort of thinking like an engineer. We move from that, we bubble up into the actual Rails framework. How do you work with the data? How do you sort of build on top of the data and build an application that is going to robustly support a user experience on pretty much any level? And ultimately, later in the course, we'll talk about creating APIs and things like that. At the end of Rails, we get into the more complicated stuff. We talk about testing on Rails, test-driven development on Rails, how to upload photos to Amazon S3, interfacing with APIs, working with email sending, how to delay jobs and use task queues to offload stuff. And a significant amount of this is actually stuff that you typically do not get, and that walking into a technical environment where you're in a professional software engineering environment is ultimately going to be really helpful for you. Once we get to the end of Rails, we jump into the front end portion of our course, and then we start over with JavaScript, and we kind of break you down and build you from the bottom up. Everything that you've learned about the fundamentals of programming with Ruby will apply to JavaScript, just in a slightly different way. And so our goal is to allow you to be employable as either a back-end engineer or a front-end engineer. And of course, you combine the two and you get a full stack. And so we want to make sure that you understand the front end to the same degree that you understand the back end. And that means really diving deep into the fundamentals of JavaScript as a programming language, and then starting to, again, build up into the higher level tools. That means going beyond just jQuery. It means you actually build jQuery as one of your homework assignments. You're going to learn how to send API calls from JavaScript, how to use design patterns from JavaScript, how do you implement MVCs, how do you implement object patterns, and how do you also work with things like the browser's event loop? How do you work with jQuery? Of course, is sort of one side, but really we want to prepare you for a much deeper level of understanding than just slapping things on the web page and making them move. We want to make sure that you're comfortable working with full-fledged front-end MVC style frameworks, or MV star style frameworks, which brings us to almost to the next phase. But before we do that, we also cover how to integrate your front end with your Rails app, how to build a Rails app into an API that serves for your Ajax-enabled front end, so that you can build single-page apps on the front end. And then we go into the AngularJS front end framework, which is you can kind of call it a Rails-ish for the front end. It's a framework that's designed to make really snappy, really potentially large front-end apps possible, where before the Wild West of JavaScript didn't really allow you to do that. And so we spend a significant amount of time working with Angular, making sure that you're super comfortable with that, super comfortable working with data. And then at the very end of the course, we have a final project, which is designed to be significant. It's a project where we actually do require you to work with another student, or at least one other student. So it's meant to be, if you don't work with anyone else along the way, although we encourage it, we don't require it. If you haven't worked with anyone else along the way, this will be your first time to work with someone else. If you have, it's definitely going to be a fire test regardless, because this is meant to be a full agile development project where you actually start out as a product manager. You create the story, you create the mock-ups, you create all the user stories, you populate the pivotal tracker, you plan out 2 full sprints worth of stories, and maybe that's 2 weeks if you're taking the program on a super fast kind of extra full-time basis. Maybe you're taking the accelerated tier, or maybe it's 4 weeks if you're taking it on a slower basis, or maybe it's 6 weeks if you're taking it on kind of an even less hours per week basis. It doesn't actually matter. The whole point of Agile is that it's all flexible. But the key is that you're going to be working with at least one other person, whether it's a student or someone on a third party, and you're going to take an app from the planning process to fruition in a professional engineering workflow all the way. And so the final projects are significant. You get the support from all of us along the way. And then at the very end of the course, we really focus on the job-related stuff, especially for the students who are looking for external jobs. Again, we have students who take it for a variety of reasons. A lot of students have actually moved within their own company from a semi-technical or non-technical role into technical roles. But then there's obviously also our goal in general is to be preparing you for a move into a software engineering role, regardless of which company that is. And so at the end, we have a slew of mock interviews, and these kind of throughout the program, we're working with you in terms of how to actually prepare yourself for that. In terms of the jobs-related side of the curriculum, I think it's probably a reasonable time also to take a walk back through that, which is that from the very beginning of the program, we're also, as I mentioned, focusing on jobs constantly, and that means that we have kind of a three-phase approach. We have the phase one, which is understanding the model and the system that you're going to be operating within as a developer moving in probably from a non-traditional background and trying to get a job, why you can't just drop your resume at the door, the hacks that you can start to use to understand the system and begin to develop the relationships that are going to help you get a job. We have a phase two approach when you're sort of halfway in between the front end and back end, and that's essentially how do you really focus on using the skills that you developed up to that point to market yourself and continue developing fruitful relationships with companies. And then we have kind of the phase three, which is the you're all in approach, which is when you're done with the program and you're really just focusing nonstop on making applications the #1 priority in your life. And then how do you do that? How do you sort of set up the cycle of your time, and how do you manage that ongoing process of carrying the job cycle all the way through from application to phone screen to take home test to technical screen to offer negotiation. We put a lot of emphasis on offer negotiation as well, because that's something that, again, our incentives are very much aligned with yours as students of the program. And so we want to make sure that you don't just get a job, that you get an exceptionally good job. And for many people, the metric of that is how well they're paid in that position once they've sort of selected the correct position for them. So we put a lot of emphasis on that as well. And then finally, how do you navigate handling multiple offers, sending emails, things like that. So that's essentially the path that the curriculum takes. And then probably the next logical question is, what is your interaction like? And so on a basic level, as I said, as a student of the program, you're taking this on a self-paced basis, and that means that you're able to take the program at your own pace. You have access to the curriculum. You also have access to our Slack channels. You can ask questions of us in the channel. Again, just like any other student, you can jump into our Ruby questions. You can jump into our JavaScript questions, depending where you are. We have a number of daily or weekly check-in sessions, which are basically open office hours where you can just drop in and ask questions. It's all video-based. It's not chat-based for that. That's sort of just a group video-based share. We have access to course speakers along the way. And if you have questions, I mean, basically it's an open community, and we're very welcoming and very focused on making sure that you get your questions answered. If you do opt for the additional tiers of support, that means working directly with mentors. We currently have, although again, these things may be different whenever you watch this in the future, but at the moment we have 2 tiers of additional support. We have a standard and an accelerated tier. One of those, the standard tier, allows you to check in with a mentor once a week, and the accelerated tier allows you to check in with a mentor 3 times a week to get, depending how quickly you're looking to go through the curriculum and how much support you want along the way. And those mentor check-ins are essentially designed to provide you with accountability and code review. And so what that means is each check-in is essentially going to be, what have you done since our last check-in relative to the goals that we set? We'll spend a significant amount of time during the check-in looking at the projects that you've created and the code that you've created, and talking about best practices and answering any questions that you have. And then we'll finish off by looking ahead and saying, okay, so given the way that your life looks and where you are in the curriculum, what is a realistic set of goals that we can accomplish for next time? So that's essentially the way that the mentors work. And then finally, I think the last style of questions that we generally receive are related to time and pacing. And that is one thing that's highly variable. It totally depends on where you are as in sort of your technical education and your life, how many hours you can throw at it. But in order to sort of benchmark things, what we have found historically is that, again, dependent on how many hours you're able to throw at it, because generally it's better to throw more hours in chunks than it is to kind of space it out thinly over a long period of time. But generally, we benchmark the course at taking roughly 1,200 hours. That's going to be more or less, depending, again, on a lot of factors. One thing that you can do to speed it up is always to get access to the additional mentor support. So or at least asking really good questions, because that sort of turns your 4-hour errors into a 10-minute debugging, as opposed to you sort of banging your head against the wall. And that's particularly important in our course because, again, this is not a one-size-fits-all. This is a course that's designed to challenge you. It's a course that's designed to prepare you, not just to kind of go and freelance on your own, but it's a course really designed to focus on how can you be a significantly strong candidate for high-level, or rather challenging roles at technical companies of the style that Silicon Valley has. So that's a very, very high bar, and it means that it's rather challenging. And so, we will challenge you through the curriculum, and we will also support you on the bottom side. So that's essentially our instructional philosophy is challenge you a lot and support you when you need it. So I think that generally covers everything that we have. And actually, the one last thing that I forgot was related to jobs and check-ins, which is that you do have check-ins while you're going through the curriculum. But one other thing that we do offer is that you're able to potentially do mock interviews as well along the way, because those can be incredibly helpful for allowing you to practice up your interview skills. So we do allow students to sort of essentially kind of sub in a normal check-in for a mock interview, and that's something that has proven really useful for students. And if you don't want to do that with a mentor, we provide the ability for you to start doing that with other students as well. And so there are a number of different elements along those axes. So we do have one question here in the Q&A app. I'll get to that in just a sec. I just want to say and remind everyone that if you're viewing, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A app, or you can join us live here in the Hangout. I posted the link in the Google event that's associated with this, although it's totally fine to ask questions either on basically anywhere that we can hear you. We'll be happy to respond. So the question is from Deepak, and he's asking, will there be any assessments as part of the Flex program? So in the full-time program, we do rely on assessments along the way to make sure that students have achieved a baseline level of proficiency to kind of keep up the pace as we go through the program. On the Flex program, basically your mentor is going to be your primary assessor of your readiness to move on to the next unit. We will provide assessments along the way at periodic intervals to kind of assess where are you in your own progress, and in the very end to provide certification on a certificate level. That's one thing that we'll be talking about very specifically. But hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, please ask maybe a clarifying question, and if not, I hope that's helpful. So for anyone else, again, feel free to ask any questions you have. If not, that's totally fine. We are always happy to answer questions either directly via email with flex@vikingcodeschool.com, or you can go to the Flex program page, which is vikingcodeschool.com/flex. I think you'll see a trend there. You can always try to reach out on Twitter. We don't always catch absolutely everything there, so probably the most reliable way is to reach out via email. Generally, we're also open to setting up one-on-one quick chats, things like that, because really we want to be here to help you understand more about what we're doing, and then how you can potentially become a part of that. Yeah, I think maybe if there are no specific questions here, again, feel free to ask at any time. I think I'll probably just take a quick walk through a couple other common questions that we get around the program. And one of them also is, how do I join? What's the difference between joining and kind of becoming a part of the Flex program as opposed to becoming a part of the full-time program? And so basically the difference is that with the immersive program, the full-time program, we have an application process. I mean, it's a program that is not necessarily going to fit everyone's needs or everyone's pace or everyone's style of learning, and that's totally fine. The immersive program is extremely collaborative. We have students working together all the time, and we have a very fixed pace as we go through because we have a limited amount of time to work with. So it's a pretty aggressive pace, and so we have an application process associated with that program. So that means that there is an application to submit, and there are interviews along the way. As far as the Flex program goes, because it's designed to be a program that you can take on at your own pace, we do not have the same level of application process. So if you go to vikingcodeschool.com/flex and you sign up for the program there, we'll be able to talk to you directly and just make sure that it is a good fit on all levels. Again, because we want to make sure that there's a good match before we get started. But other than that, you can essentially get started whenever you're ready. We kick off new batches every week, and you're basically able to start as soon as you're ready to pull the trigger. So I think, again, feel free to ask any questions you want. And otherwise, I do have some more questions that I can answer that are sort of in line with commonly asked questions. Another one is that a lot of workplaces provide continuing education. And that's awesome if you have that. Congratulations, you've probably negotiated well for something. Regardless, this is a program that is designed to be one that you could potentially apply those funds towards. And so what that means is that we'll be able to work with you to kind of provide you with whatever documentation that you need in order to get your workplace to either sometimes there's matching funds, sometimes they're just willing to pay for the full program. We're willing to kind of provide the certification and all of the other stuff that you need to justify that. So please reach out if that's the case, and we can always work on that. So we have one more question here. Do I have access to the whole curriculum? I'm asking because I've already studied Ruby. So we don't give access to the whole curriculum in one go. We want to make sure that if you're going through the program, you have to achieve kind of the level of proficiency that the curriculum demands. We actually almost always have students who have started and studied beforehand, have gone through and at least done the projects and have learned a significant amount, because we go deeper than almost everything that you've probably experienced before. So it is important that you know, it's great if you've been able to study before, but we are definitely also going to work with you to make sure that you're able to understand and do everything that we have in the curriculum by at the very least having you accomplish the major projects along the way before we sort of open up the remaining stuff. I hope that covers it. And hey, Deepak, it looks like you've joined us on the inside. So
yeah, I mean, I couldn't find the link earlier, so that's why I was chatting.
No problem. Did that answer your question? And do you have any other questions behind it?
So yeah, I mean, yeah, that was one of my questions. I am a developer right now, but I'm not a web developer. I am like a networking engineer. So I code in C. So I don't know much about web development. So I wanted to learn and kind of, I have some ideas on my own. So I wanted to build some web application. So I thought the FX program would be a good fit for me because I don't have the luxury of quitting my job and joining a full time.
Right.
So
well,
yeah,
that's very much one of the cases that this program is designed for. You know, and again, in terms of what's the ultimate outcome, if the outcome is simply can I learn to build a basic web application, essentially we're gonna go well past that. So I mean, our goal is again to hit the highest bar possible, and that the highest bar possible is essentially can I get hired as a software engineer at a top tier tech company, and so that's, you know, you don't necessarily have to get all the way up to there to get useful from it, because, you know, maybe somewhere halfway there is the ultimate goal that you want to accomplish. But we are definitely going to be teaching you to that ultimate goal, and it's kind of up to you whether you want to sort of get 80% of the way there and then you've accomplished that, or if you want to take it all the way.
Actually, I tried doing this on my own, like online. I mean, getting resources online, studying online. But I started wasting a lot of time in Googling stuff.
Yeah.
And I decided, okay, I'd start from scratch and learn everything. So I don't waste time in searching for stuff for most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, I know that well. Years and years and years ago, I learned as well, and that was one of the major motivations behind getting into this in the very first place. You know, I can totally understand what it feels like to spend 200 hours taking a course and then feeling like you're only 20 hours closer to whatever your goal is, because you've learned all this really cool stuff, but it's not exactly the stuff that you needed to learn.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, the reason that we exist is to try and pull that together and make it as compressed as possible, so that you can learn the best stuff in the most direct path possible. Each time.
I have one more question. So you said you will open up the curriculum like a little by little, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I finish. So how do you how do you like know that I'm ready to go to the next level? That's my question. The first question, assessment.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, there will be an assessment. If I pass Ruby, then you will open up next lesson or something like that.
Yes, so we rely on the mentors for that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Basically, if you're able to demonstrate to them based on the project work that you've created, that you have the proficiencies that we're essentially requiring, then they'll open up the next units. So what that might mean is that you might end up having to build, some of the projects along the way to prove that, and essentially the project itself becomes that test.
Okay.
So maybe that you don't have to dive all the way deep. Maybe it means that you don't have to do all of the little, the sort of exercises and projects along the way. But then there is definitely, at the end of each unit, there's a fairly major project where you would at least have to hit the high points of proficiency.
Okay. And will you guys help me find someone for doing the projects?
In terms of a mentor?
Not mentor. So you said a project I need to pair up with somebody. The
final project, yeah. And that's actually a great question. Is do we help you match with somebody else? And the answer is that yes. Like that's actually part of what actually Dara is is going to be helping out with as well. Is working with the students. And identifying, we have tools available so that you can actually see the other students that are nearby you in the curriculum, and you can reach out to them directly. So you have the ability to do so on your own, and then if you need some help with that, because obviously we have kind of a bird's level view of where everyone is, that if you're interested in working on projects before the final project with other students, we definitely kind of play matchmaker a little bit and help you work on projects together. And then for the final project, that's I guess kind of just even more so. It's kind of more of the same. It's when students are starting to approach the final project, we begin pointing them out to each other and creating that matching.
Okay, good job. Yep, sounds good.
Great. Awesome. Well, so I think do you have any last questions? Otherwise, I think that draws us to the end.
No, I'm fine right now. So let me join. So one more. How many people have actually graduated the Flex program and achieved their goals so far?
Yeah, so the program started about a year ago, and we've had about a dozen students in the program, although not all of them have finished it, so about half of them have finished that.
Okay.
And so again, we did that on an invite-only basis, and we're beginning to open this up publicly now.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, if you have any additional questions, or if you're interested in the program, again, you can check out vikingcodeschool.com/flex, and we have the ability to sign up there. You can also send us an email directly at flex@vikingcodeschool.com. And so, thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Deepak. And to anyone else who's listening now or listening later in the future, please let us know if you have any questions or if you're interested. And thank you for listening. And from myself and from Dara and from all the team at Viking Code School, I hope you have a wonderful day and happy coding. Thank you.